Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another Data Vault Innovators Community Meetup. Today, we're actually going to have a really interesting conversation about the CDAO conference that was on last week in Sydney. I have with me a couple of my colleagues, James Hartwright and Richard Harris, and we're going to have a bit of a chat about what we learnt at the event, what we saw at the event, and it was probably our first event that we've been back to. But just quickly, guys, thanks for joining. Can you maybe do a quick intro? So James, you first.
Cool. Yes, James Hartwright. I work in the data strategy, data governance space for Certus, and I actually had the privilege of doing a presentation at the conference last week around data fabric and data mesh, which was actually one topic that we're going to go through.
And Richard Harris, I'm the Director for Business Development here at Certus Insight. So I look after all of our client relationships.
Excellent. Thanks for joining, guys. So just quickly, obviously the purpose of the community, the Data Vault Innovators community, is really to connect technical professionals and those that are interested in Data Vault, or that are using Data Vault to solve problems for their organisations. Place for people to come together and have conversations or debate on the broader topics around information management and how Data Vault can be applied to addressing some of those, addressing topics like training and certification, and obviously tools and technologies that help. And we're really based on community principles, so we really want to have involvement from the community. So obviously we'd love to have questions and ideas on new topics that you'd like to hear us talk about, or if you feel like you have something really interesting you'd like to present to the community, well then we'd love you to subscribe. That really helps us build the community and get the message out there. So once again, thanks for joining today, and let's jump into the conversation. So guys, this was our first physical conference. I think it was the first time I'd seen you both physically in 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. How did you feel about getting back out there in a big group of people?
You want me to go?
Yeah.
So having done a lot of these different conferences, and obviously manning a stand in the exhibitors area, has its own set of unique challenges. But it felt good. It felt good actually being in front of people again, being able to talk face to face, and seeing old colleagues that you haven't seen in a number of years in the industry, and sort of catching up. So there was very much I felt there was a real good vibe in the room. People seemed to be excited to be there. There certainly seemed to be a fair amount of engagement, in the room, and lots of conversations happening outside. So I suspect a lot of people have come in really keen to, get back up to speed and see what's been happening as we've been, holed up in our homes.
Yeah. Similar perspective as to Richard. The number of new clients that I've been working with remotely for the last 2 years, and then meeting them for the first time and going, wow, you're really tall. You didn't look that tall on the Zoom meeting. But yeah, I'd agree also with Richard, is that I think that and I'll go in, some of the presentations are actually really strong in terms of what we did through COVID, how we changed, and what it forced us to change. And the actually some of the curly questions that are coming through from the audience, there's that real piece of, we've all come together, we've all been through that well, and now we're sort of coming out, but we are in a new way. What are you doing? How are you doing it? Where are we finding any commonalities that we can then take on as we're moving into a hybrid world of working?
An interesting question that came up for me. It was the only time I heard the question, but I dare say it's in the top of mind for a lot of people, was more on the customer behavior side, and people really worried about, well, all of our models are predicated on pre-COVID behaviors. How on earth do we trust post-COVID? Because we don't know what behaviors will stay. So I think that's going to be a really interesting thing that will come through over the next weeks and months in this industry, is how do we modify our models so that we don't just believe all of the COVID behavior is going to persist moving forward. There's a lot of unknowns out there, which in itself is interesting.
Yeah. Personally, I think you're probably both very lucky I didn't hug you both when I saw you, given that I've been in a little office for a very long time at home. But yeah, it was great to see people and connect. I think that connection, we obviously have all got comfortable with virtual, and a good replacement for physical, but it's not quite the same. So just for the audience, I guess we'll just quickly touch on what the CDAO conference actually is and what it's about. So it was at Piermont in Sydney. I think there was a couple of hundred people at the event, about that way. And it's focused very much on, so it's the Chief Data and Analytics Officer event. It's run by Corinium. We've participated in their event series for a number of years, and they do a really good job. So it was nice to be working with them again. And it focuses on data and analytics in all its forms. And it gets a lot of support from the various vendors in the community. So, the likes of Snowflake and Click and Tibco I saw, and HP, and so the big technology vendors, and a lot of the service providers as well. So obviously we were there talking about Data Vault and Iris and some of our partners like IBM as well. And then a range of service providers as well. I think I saw EY or KPMG was also so very focused on that. And so the community that's there is very interested in the sorts of things we like to talk about here on the community around data management and governance and data quality and MDM and all of those lovely topics. So let's start with highlights. Rich, what was your highlight from maybe a knowledge perspective or a presentation?
Well, there were a few actually. I was lucky enough to attend some of the speakers, and so I'll try and call out some of the things that stuck with me. One was some of the latest statistics that have been talked about. So for example, we know that a lot of very clever models are built, but they don't ever make their way into production. I think the latest number that was put up was about 10% of models actually make their way into production, and a large part of that is because of trust. And there seem to be quite a lot of these stats that have come around. 66% of transformation program of case studies of things that they've done now, and Simone Roberts has been a person in this industry for many years, so always worth listening to. I thought Stephen Miller, he shared some really good insights for what IAG have been doing. And again, for me, one of the things about this conference was the willingness for a lot of these brands to share a bit more of actually what they did wrong, and how they improved it, which was kind of refreshing. Data protection on day 2. There was it's the only time I heard it come up. I don't know whether you did, but as we move more and more into artificial intelligence, the way that the privacy regulations are going is much more control in the hands of the consumer, and understanding of lineage, and really getting rid of any black box kind of analytics going on. And I think that was an interesting conversation from, I'm just trying to check my notes, Edward Santow, I believe. And his whole point was, as we move more and more into this area of AI and machine learning, bias and looking for errors that we're baking in based upon societal structures and so forth. These are the things that are going to be the big gotchas and probably the expensive problems later on. They're probably the highlights.
Yeah, and taking on from Richard, that the big change I saw, even with the technology vendors standing up, almost nothing about specific technologies. Like the Alteryx guy came in and started talking about the things that have grown and changed over the last 2 years in this definitively physically separated, that the business users are looking to the data management team to do, as we've always said, just provide me the metadata, the information about that data, and let me build things on top of it. But let me build them in a process-oriented way, help me through the change management, the organizational change. So a turnaround of people and the engagement, and way more connection with the business, which maybe is an artifact of Zoom and Teams meetings that I can't actually get there and face to face. So we've got to get better and closer at how we work together. And the second one is process and process and repeatability. And I think there's in the process, one of the things that I took, which was repeated in almost every conversation, we can't get new people. And we've got to do something to retain the people that we've got. Like if there's just rote work, repeatable work, I've got to systemize that so that these people are working on the stuff that's new and innovative and exciting. And there's a real strong message coming through there in that.
Yeah, actually, that came up time and time again. Is how, where are you getting people from? How are you retaining? I know. I think it was I can't remember who was bragging about their retention rates.
Oh yeah, Macquarie Bank.
Macquarie Bank, yeah, Macquarie were bragging that they're able to retain staff. And what I really liked about their approach was they really seem to be nurturing their teams. If you come in as a business analyst, that doesn't mean you're going to be forever a business analyst. They're building these teams of cross-functional capability with the express intent of having people learn what each other do so that you can collaborate more effectively. And of course, that gives people an opportunity to learn and grow and adapt. And I think what we're likely to see, particularly with a lot of resources, leaving Australia in the last couple of years, not returning, is businesses are going to have to look internally, and they're going to have to look at ways that they can upskill existing teams to do what they need to do. Gone are the days where you can just go out and buy the skills and hire them into your team and job done. It's now going to have to be a program where we can nurture those existing skills and give them new capabilities.
Yeah, and that tribing, so bringing together groups of people with different skills that make up that agile team, while also having the guild structure of right, you're in there and doing this function, you're doing it in a repeatable way. And I think there's as the double hit there, which is, look, if I'm going to lose you, even though I don't want to, if you've built this in the way that everybody knows that they can pick it up and maintain it, which is, I think, a sort of a double artifact of, we're trying to systemize, we're trying to repeat, both from a maintenance reduction perspective and the dearth of technical skills out there. It's
kind of interesting. I mean, obviously for a Data Vault audience, we're talking about themes that get talked about quite often, around standards-based and automated, but Agile was a huge theme for the event as well. I mean, you both mentioned to me while we were there, these guys are promoting, if it's not Agile, we're not doing it, that was a core theme, I think, coming across. And I think people are really starting to grasp, because I think in software development, Agile has been well established for a long time, but in data, and especially in enterprise information management type, heavily governed and rigorous sort of processes, it's tended to still lean to that waterfall sort of approach. And
one of the first things I noted about Macquarie was they said we are the #1 agile workplace in the world. So they clearly are focused on agile as being their competitive advantage, not only in the market, but in terms of employee retention.
And you're right.
Everyone was talking agile. And data fabric.
Yeah.
Data fabric was probably the most commonly used word without anyone knowing what it actually meant at the event.
Well, that's a really good segue, Richard. James, let's chat about data mesh. Let's dive in for a few minutes and give us sort of what you've learned in putting together that presentation.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, and we will share the presentation with this audience. We'll make it available.
So there's the constructs that we've got. So we've got data lakes, we've got data warehouses. If we've done them well, we've done them in Data Vault. But we've been surfacing that information, but we're still a constraint on the organization. We still got 20 sources coming in that we still need to manage and the change over time, while still giving consistency and integrated views to our end consumers. But there's a load of consumers who are still going, well, I only work on this one system. Just give me near real-time operational data off the back of that. And there's a couple of flavors in there, which is, well, I can give you it from the data lake, which helps, but also the data virtualization piece of saying, well, I can bring in a little near real-time piece and present you that information, but you've still got the cross-system problems. And that's where the data fabric starts coming in this mode of, I can bring those two bits of those two source system content, or 3 or 4 or 5 together, and present it to you in a way that you don't need to worry about the technology behind it. What that's done though is brought all of those things that we as data management practitioners, and especially data vault practitioners, go, you're going to get into some trouble there, because you need recognized ways of bringing this data together, and you still need a way that goes, well, go and look at the raw data, that's fine, but we sort of need to do a little bit of computation because of the legacy stuff that you got in. Data Fabric is trying to pull all that together. They're trying to go, here is an enterprise catalog, here's a description of all of the systems, here are the metrics that are going on within those sources. And a number of vendors across that virtualization and fabric have sort of got halfway there. But in almost all of the cases we've got, it's a little immature. One big thing that we're getting is that more and more of them are going to a graph or a hub and spoke structure, which is great for us data vaulters. But what it's doing is moving it way more towards the real time. So API orientation, and here is the way that this set of data is brought together as a data product and presented out. And that's when this links in with data mesh. So Zhamak Dehghani invented this thing called data mesh. She comes from that API DevOps arena, but she's applying it across our data space. And she's gone, we just need to be better at building data products and using the expertise, the SMEs in those product areas, rather than trying to push it into the always too small data management team. So this concept of data products, of here is the data product, and this is the standard way that I'm presenting it to you, and I'm presenting APIs, and I'm doing it through version control. So here is a business rule that we've applied, or we've improved that business rule, here's the new version. But I'm still providing the version 1, because I know as a consumer, you still need to catch up. And following that, very much that API construct. I'm hoping that anybody that's listening that knows Data Vault goes, hey, I do business rules, I do version control, and this is the beautiful thing about mesh. So taking that mesh, taking that concept, but saying, here, this is the published information. So we've got the individual data products, but then there's not one overall data product for a business, because I've got HR, I've got the claims system, I've got the product system that they still need to, at some point, connect. And so interoperability standards across those. And again, if you've gone with a hub and spoke or a graph vault structure, this becomes way more easy. Here are the known links between these two products. And it doesn't stop you creating new links. It just, these are the recognized standards, and they're under version control. She calls it a socio-technological paradigm.
I bet she does.
What I go is, it's about the people and the methods and less about the technology. Yeah. And again, just so many parallels with Data Vault. And so I think that what I see in this data mesh, as we're moving towards the data fabric and a data mesh, that if we've got a lake house, warehouse repository that is orientated towards Data Vault, and we've got new things coming in terms of near real-time processing, and we can very easily take all of those Data Vault standards and move them up and move them closer to the business consumer. And I think there's some really strong things that we can mesh with the data mesh and Data Vault, and I think it's the solution. And that's that we're definitely going to be within this innovation practice going, hey, let's build some practices, because this data mesh concept is 2 years old. It's lent on a load of the DevOps pieces. What we've got is a great thing that's been here for 20 years. And we know all these things around version control and change sources. We're just going to be able to surface them and spread across templates and standards and repeatability. And I think trust.
What came across to me within that as well, everyone that was talking about this concept was very quickly, even if they didn't use the name, they were talking about data ops. And that seems to have taken a real foothold. The principles of DevOps and you treating data or data assets as a product, like an output as a product, it seems to be the way everyone's kind of said, yep, that makes sense now, and they're baking that into their processes. So I think it's almost inevitable in a move that way. And I think my comment about everyone talking data mesh, even the vendors, they're latching onto this as being the next key word they need to have in their marketing material. So the watchword that I would put out would be to be very careful and look at the detail out there, because I think there's a danger of looking at those silver bullets through technology. But interesting, not to keep going back to Macquarie, but I think going back to the Macquarie podcast that we did a while back, talking about the data ops process that we built with them, probably isn't a bad time to go back, because they've clearly moved on from there. They've done more, but it was a good example of how to start out on that journey, I think.
And for this audience, I mean, we're talking to people who understand Data Vault in general terms. Most of our audience are Data Vault practitioners or are starting to kick the tires around, would this work for our business and stuff. So there's a level of knowledge. And I know we talk a lot about the best place to solve a business rule is actually at the source, rather than solving it at the warehouse. And so we try and do that. And this seems like Mesh is trying to shift, not just solving the business rule, but actually solving the ownership back to the source. And each source system or each division is going to then provide, a governed data product to the rest of the business, and that obviously a Vault model can then help you create those links. But we also just talked about, we just talked like only 5 or 10 minutes ago about the limitations of finding people who know what they're doing. And this is going to distribute that requirement out to more people in more parts of the business. And I think it's a great idea, but I also think we need to be practical and we need to help people take those steps. And so there's going to be lots of training, and then we're going to have well-defined standards, for each department to build those products and maintain those products. And I think that's such an opportunity for Vault to actually be embraced and really help make Mesh a real thing. Do you agree, James?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, as somebody who's run a couple of data management practices, those source system owners making changes and forgetting to tell us, moving the onus back on them of saying, look, we have an interface contract, here they are, and they're done and managed as a data product, and I need somebody from your team who's the SME to be engaging this and keeping that trust and that version control. That's a really strong piece. But also, it's not just about hooking an API in from Salesforce and then presenting that. There's still a load of business context and legacy systems and the integration between two systems that needs to be built and described and maintained within that data product, so that anybody with that graph, Vault, repeatability template expertise is going to be a key member of that little tribe across the organization.
Which went hand in hand with a lot of people talking about the need for effective governance in all of these, because as you start to expand the ownership of, or the responsibility of managing data out more to the business, and starting to build up data stewards who are more, front customer facing, for want of a better word, or upstream, that need for a strong governance layer and a capability very much goes hand in hand. And so, a lot of the examples people were talking about, it was very much, how do we improve operations? How do we put the information in the hands of our staff so they are more enabled with data? And of course, how do we then make sure that people understand what they can do, what they can't do, and govern that data appropriately?
So obviously, we're talking about lots of different capabilities that need to be, developed and, and training and processes and all of those sorts of things. But it's all possible because, we've obviously done it around warehouses already. And so we're just going to distribute that out. And then, James, I know one of your slides started to look at all those key functions that are kind of required, and and it's a governance platform, and it's metadata management, and it's data quality framework, and and lots of different components, and and to be completely transparent, we were there with IBM, so IBM helped us to attend the event, and so they have a really good data fabric offering, but they're not the only ones. But this is a real I guess journey we're seeing in the market, is the technology vendors trying to provide kind of integrated components for that full stack. So who are the kind of, I guess, what are the key components, and then who are the players, I guess, might be
there's still I'll go on it. So technology providers and the data fabric, there are a number of, like you put out IBM, and like the IBM Big SQL is actually a really strong thing in terms of bringing those together. But the Zetaris data fabric, again, really cool, metadata driven. Denodo getting there, some really cool parts in those. But we really do, so take all of those technologies, but still understand that I've got a legacy system that I built, that was built 20 years ago, that doesn't have API, that doesn't have openness, that we can't just rip out all of our old processes and just go, let's lock a data fabric in and we're all good. This is going to be, we're going to have lakes and warehouses, and we're going to have them over time. We're going to still have to have that regulatory set in stone. All of the financial GL applications are still going to have to be there. So it's going to be a transition in the process. So, and I did say in the presentation, there are two things I think you need as just the core thing, which is a trusted strategic partner who's just bringing in those external, look, not to the, hey, we've done 50 of these, we can just rip you through it, but actually just, hey, with this other client, we found this problem as we were going through this, that matches. So use that external strategic partner to help you through. And then in terms of a technology vendor, look at your technology vendor in terms of, not just in terms of the thing that gets you the rah up to the board that gets you more money, but look at that trajectory and try and work out your, right, we've got 2 source systems we've migrated and integrated now, and now we've got 4 and 5 and 10, and make sure that the cost of the service isn't going up and the cost of the consulting that you require isn't going up. But there's I've said it before, and it's one of my standard things I repeat: the people, the methods, and the technology. And there's a whole ton of stuff around methods and policies and procedures, and as we said, automation within there that I think just has to come to the fore. And it's not just from the perspective of it's a good thing to do. It's from the perspective of this is a decentralized, distributed process. And if you haven't got everybody working in the same way, and interface contracts and version control and a DevOps CI/CD style of release, you'll be 12 months in and you're just going to break.
Yeah, Rich, I think James brought up a really good point there. Like, obviously, there are the legacy systems and stuff, and I think these events are like really aspirational. They paint data mesh is where we're all heading, but data mesh might be 10 years away, or who knows. So like, and data fabric's kind of the technology maybe to make it become apparent, but that's still developing. And and lakes and warehouses are reality right now, and they solve lots of problems. And you work really closely with our customers and obviously talk to lots of people at the event. So what do you think, like, what's the steps that people are really trying to do now versus, to get them on the path to that aspirational kind of?
There's a couple of, I'll start off with talking about, I guess, going back to some of the presentations, because James made that point earlier, that it doesn't appear to be people are looking at the technology as being the answer. Time and time again, things like culture, process, structure, these all came to the fore. So I think that speaks to one of the bigger changes is that organizations, I think, are starting to see that in order to do what they need to do, they need to start changing how they work, not necessarily the tooling that they work within, how decisions are made, which kind of people you enable. That term bottleneck came up. That kind of needs to go away. Data needs to be made available to the business users. IT has to start trusting that business people kind of know what they're doing if they're given the right tools and that they trust the data
with appropriate guardrails,
et cetera. But I think there was definitely something that came to the fore, is that a lot of organizations are accepting that idea of, yep, I need to restructure and have a genuine change of culture and our attitudes towards data if we are going to move, to the next level. I think there are then a lot of organizations, again, to the point that James made, is the skills are not ubiquitous. They're not, you can't just go out there and find people who have expertise in what you want. And so I think finding those partners who are subject matters in their area, who have a genuine interest in your success as a client, they're the ones that are going to probably be of the most value to you in the initial stages. People who can come in and look at what you've built and say, yeah, okay, this is good, this is not so good, these are some things you might want to think about to improve, just to make sure that if you decided to follow a standard, you decided to follow a direction, you're not making up your own version. Again, that happened a lot with Agile. A lot of people came up with their own version of what Agile is, and now we're seeing a much more realistic definition, but it being a more common term, and people understand when you say Agile, okay, I kind of know what that principle means now. So they're kind of what I'm saying is that change of structure and culture and attitudes to data, and an acceptance of without the requisite skills, we are going to make some mistakes that are going to be costly. We know this because we've seen it in the last few decades. So we're going to stop doing that and try and get ourselves set up for success from the start.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, and you and I are probably maybe having the same thought, is absolutely the people, the process, embracing Agile as an approach to doing this stuff, building incrementally, getting teams to understand they need to work, cross-functional, and all of those structural components and process components, and then at the same time, from the data perspective, is start addressing things like integration and data quality and those sorts of things in a way that sets them up for the future. So solving current problems but not painting yourself into a particular corner seems to be kind of a threat as well, because I guess I remember 10 years ago everyone was talking about big data as the new the new approach, and mesh is maybe the new version of that, where it's describing a lot better way to manage information within an organizational structure. But it's a goal. It's and that goal's not fully defined yet, and it's going to evolve as we get there. So I think it's kind of not painting yourself into a corner and really setting yourself up for long-term success.
Yeah, I taking a bit from Richard and what you just said there is an effect of the pandemic. Everything that I did in my beautiful time series dashboard that was well constructed for an enterprise in a number of areas, I just have to throw out the door. This year is not like last year, not like the year before. So that business centricity, the business wanting and needing access to the data to understand what's going on. Hey, I've 10,000 customers have just disappeared, which is 3 times my normal annual, but I've actually managed to retain 10,000 more. So all of those plays within the organization are really important. And the secondary part on that, in line with data quality, is I think anomaly detection. So the shape and the style of data, and allowing systems and machines to do anomaly detection and go, don't actually, well, 2 things. You don't need to come and look into that dashboard every day and get the consideration, because the anomaly detection is going to give you a little alert that something's going on. But also that the more the anomaly detection structure comes up, the more you can go, hey, I'm into a sort of predictive and prescriptive analytics space whereby I know that if it pops up that there's something that I should be going and looking at and going look at the data and like slicing and dicing all the way down. And so I think that thing of the data services, IT, etc., need to go, hey, there's a level of trust I need to give to you in opening that data. but being involved in that process in, hey, I need a new anomaly detection piece dropping in here. Yeah, we can look after that for you, because that depends on the data quality and consistency of that data. So if we can get into a managed self-serve mode, we will create a better business.
One of the challenges that were talked about, and this it will never go away, it doesn't seem to have gone away in the last few decades even, is that idea of, because a lot of the requests for innovation and new insights are now coming from the business. I want to service my customers better. I want to improve the operations of my business unit, and I need information to do so. And that bottleneck is proving to be a problem. As we said, yes, we have to trust more of those end users down the line. But coupled with that then is a need for the executive to understand the challenges of organizing data appropriately when you start out on this journey. Because again, it's a good thing that we're seeing a lot of very clever case studies with fantastic industry models producing great predictive insights, and people are halving their operational costs with digital twinning. But again, what they don't realize is the huge amount of effort that went up and all the failed projects that happened before that success. And that still seems to be a fundamental barrier, is that IT don't seem to be able to adequately express what the realistic budget for a project should be and why. And so inevitably they get less money than they need and have to go back and say, we can't deliver, can we please have some more? Now that might never go away. It might just be the way that business will always operate. We're not going to give you the money you ask for until you come back and ask for more. But it is still that perpetual thing that I think non-data people seem to think that all you've got to do is throw data into a database, type a few things, and you've got a beautiful dashboard appearing before you. And yes, we can do that, but you wouldn't have any trust or faith in the data. And I think that's the bit that we still, as an industry, need to do a better job of, is getting that executive level to understand this is complicated. It can be done, and it can be done well, but it needs to be done right to begin with. Otherwise, you accumulate tremendous amount of technical debt that causes you just to throw everything out later on.
So, bringing things back to CDAO, and I heard an interesting story from someone relaying it to me from one of the sessions about one of the large supermarkets who had done a single piece of analytics to find out what was most commonly stolen, and then they just made a location change and some other changes within the store, and saved significant, like millions and millions of dollars by a single piece of analytics and a single process change, within the store. Those sorts of things, obviously, they're the gold nuggets that we all like to look for and then hold up as this is why analytics. But it's great to hear those stories, because it isn't all hard slog to find small incremental things. Sometimes there are those nuggets to change. Like that would be a significant thing, that money goes straight to the bottom line for that organization. So, those stories are cool. What did you guys hear? Was there anything surprising like that I guess came across your consciousness?
Nothing to me that was surprising. It was mostly things when I heard them went, oh, that was a really good thing that you did. But nothing that I would say was truly extraordinary. It was more that people, here's what it was. If you went back maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, people would be talking about what they're building to be able to do. This time, people seem to be talking about what they actually did. That to me was kind of the as I say, I mentioned Transport for New South Wales. They're using a lot of imagery data now. And sensor data to understand what's going on in their network. They're expanding what data they're capturing to include things like bike paths, and want to get people to opt in so they can measure the time it takes them to walk to various bus stops and things like that. They truly have innovated in that area. So I think for me, Transport for New South Wales is a really interesting one in terms of the things they have actually done and want to do. And then I suppose, the Macquarie Bank was really interesting. The other thing that popped for me was the number of old names that came back again. I hadn't seen TIBCO at an event in quite some time. And they were there showing off their stuff in the data management space. KPMG were there. First time I've seen, one of the big four represent in that way, as well as, some of the older players. But I wouldn't say anything truly. I went, wow, that's fantastic. Maybe because I'm jaded because I've been in the industry for a while. But it was more encouraging to see people had actually done some really good, interesting projects that have been successful and applauded by the business. And there seems to be a lot more of those that people could call upon.
Yeah.
You mentioned transport. I heard a story. It actually wasn't at the event, but it was just last week. One of the Queensland councils have put cameras on the front of their council vehicles, and they're identifying potholes, which is a massive problem. I live in Queensland. After all the floods, and I'm sure it's the same down in Sydney. After all the floods, I think the Gold Coast had 3,500 potholes or some ridiculous number, and so finding them, locating them, and just scheduling a crew to go and fix it before it rips the axle out of 10,000 cars. Pretty valuable thing to do for the populace, and a really good use of image analytics. So,
cool. And I like in line with that, the in every CDAO style presentation I've seen repeated, how do you get your management backing, and how do you keep that management backing? You've got to do some little rah-rah projects to start with. But something that thing of putting cameras on the front of council vehicles, you're going, look, we knew we had a problem. We thought about how we would do it. We would get it implemented. And that's a good bit of rah-rah. But think of all of it, like all of that. Hey, we've got this now for the future. Now I've got that camera on there. There's all sorts of other things that I can do with it and information. And I've got it in a way that I know that I've got continuity. We didn't just do it as a, hey, look, we'll have got all those potholes fixed in the next 3 months. So let's just finish that.
Get rid of the cameras,
continuity thing and stacking capability on. And I like, again, it's in every single presentation. Get your management backing. Have them be there on you with the journey, but make sure that you've got little incrementals. And it goes back to agile. It goes back to.
And I would be willing to bet that idea probably came from one of the supervisors of those trucks who realised, hey, we're driving
I've just
along.
Gone through a pothole.
There's a pothole on Smith Street. Can someone come and fix it out? And it doesn't take much for someone to go, why don't we just stick a GoPro on the front of that thing and do it through AI? And there you have a business positive solution.
And it comes back to one of the core tenets of Data Vault. But obviously we're the Data Vault trainers, and we love talking data. But everyone we talk to, we say deliver something to the business regularly. And it's something that the big theme for us in one of our large projects right now is we've got to shift from delivering larger chunks to delivering small things very regularly, incremental value, and build the value of these things, because you don't want to deliver something big and they go, that would have been useful if we'd had it 6 months ago, but now we need it to look like this. But also, people will get ideas. As soon as you deliver image recognition off the front of a car, they go, oh, we could use that for this, or I'd love to see it by that, or can we look at the changing state of the roads and save money on repairs, or all those sort of things. So it's definitely nice to see people shifting to talking about use cases and talking about incremental delivery, and understanding that Agile's the way to do that, and understanding that integration of data sources is kind of the big challenge. The mechanics of moving data is no longer the problem. It can be automated and everything else. So the value really lies in being able to discover things across multiple different sets of information
and do it quickly. I mean, that was the thing that came through. I have an idea and I want to put it out there and test it today. Is kind of the speed with which people are kind of, even if it's not accurate, just give me something I can play with. So again, we're back to that. Business needs to be enabled with data, and the exec needs to be educated that the business needs data to be more effective.
Well, look, it was great to see you both in person.
Yes.
And
Thank you, mate.
hopefully it won't be 2.5 years before I see you both in person again.
No.
There's lots of more events starting to come now, and I definitely encourage people. I'm sure you guys would be the same. You encourage people to start going. Like, the numbers weren't as good as we'd seen from CDAO in maybe 2019 or what have you, but definitely there was enthusiasm to come back. And I think there's still a bit of social distancing probably going on as well, and but it was so nice to just be able to connect with people. And so I'd encourage anyone in the audience to start getting to events.
There seemed to be a genuine desire to share your experiences and learn from others, even just having coffee. There seemed to be a lot more openness than I've experienced in the last few years, where people are a bit more guarded about their competitive advantage. People now, whether that's a factor of they've been comfortable at home and we've let go of a lot of the business speak, but I found it to be a much more relaxed and open conversation with many people.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, maybe next time we all meet up, we'll wear green shirts. I think that might be a good idea.
Sure,
blue was a good choice for today, so well done. For the audience, obviously talking events today, the WWDVC, so the Worldwide Data Vault Consortium event, is coming up the 23rd of May. Obviously, for our audience, mostly in the Southern Hemisphere, you can join that remotely and look at it virtually. And if you do go to the event, you can watch things in your own time frame and have access for an extended period. So we'd encourage you, if you haven't yet got registered for that, to register for that. There's lots of useful information, and Knowles Ibershon will be presenting there, as well as Bronwyn Fairbairn, so two of our team. And there'll be lots of useful information, and we'll bring a few snippets from the WWDVC over the coming months into this forum. But we'd really like you to try and support the DVA if possible. And obviously, with other things that we're doing, we announced the hands-on training course for Data Vault certified people recently as well. So if you are Data Vault certified and you want to get hands-on and see some of the tools working and have a go at vaulting a data set and working through that with Knowles, that's available. So reach out if you would like. We'll be doing another meetup next month, so we look forward to seeing you all then. Thanks, guys.